and welcome to Mimi. Mimi is a kind of a nickname. You can introduce yourself more formally if you'd like to, but we have, as you, or most of you who are connected up probably know now, we have been setting up a seminar basically to think through the pandemic in various ways. And what we've kind of moved towards in the second series of our seminar is a kind of slightly more personal account from people about how they have been living with the pandemic. So we've had an account from a physiotherapist on quite a lot of the physical aspects. And Mimi is a colleague from, well, I think you're from South America, but living at the moment in Amsterdam, and we've connected up with her in the engagement space of the university. So that's how we that's how we got connected up, and we asked her to do a seminar related to her engagement activity with it's NMMU. It was NMMU. It's been a bit of a mix because of the COVID thing, but I'm going to let her explain all of that. But it has to do with her engagement with refugees, and now what do you do when it's really difficult to contact and communicate? So I'm not going to speak much. I'm going to hand you over to Mimi and let her introduce herself. She will give you a whole lot more detail, I hope. And yes, I am going to disappear myself, and Mimi, we will contact you or come back into contact with you once your presentation is done. Okay, thank you very much for being here.
Great.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Andrea, for introducing me and for inviting me to be part of this seminar. And thank you, everybody who's here. I'm very, very honored to be part of this. Although I wish it was in other circumstances and I could just be there face to face and yeah, not be the only one just speaking. I will try to speak in less than half an hour, so then we have more space for dialogue and questions. And what I want to share with you today is a mix between my experience trying to survive as a PhD during the pandemic and also a project I developed in response to the situation of COVID-19 called Food for Change. But let me start a little bit introducing myself. My full name is Miriam Adelina Ocadiz. I am Mexican, but I'm studying in the Netherlands at the moment. I'm a PhD candidate within the project Engage Scholarship, Narratives of Change. That if I say it in my own words, it's a project that wants to understand the role academia have in the lived experiences of forced migrants in the Netherlands, the US, and South Africa. I have the honor to be the PhD focusing on the South African context, and I arrived in South Africa last February, ready to be there for 6 months field work, and I have a plan for the next 3 years. That it will start with a couple of months, getting to know the Nelson Mandela University, and I also volunteer at the Eastern Cape Refugee Center. And this gave me the chance to get to know different refugee communities around the city, including a group of women from the Democratic Republic of Congo, with whom I have a quite good connection, and they even invited me to one of their own meetings because they have their own organization. And this was a sort of baby shower, but after the baby is already born. And it was a very, very nice gathering on a Sunday after church where each of us brings some food and we had music in Lingala and we just chat. And while we were enjoying ourselves, President Ramaphosa was declaring a state of disaster. So this was Sunday, 15th of March. And 2 days later, I was in the last direct flight from Johannesburg to Amsterdam. So I had to leave South Africa all of a sudden. And at first I recognized this was such a privilege to really literally kind of fly away and shield myself in my apartment here in The Hague. But I was also expected by myself and by my supervisors to continue with the PhD even if I couldn't be in South Africa. And I was and I'm still very grateful to have this project that keeps my mind running, keeps my mind kind of sane during this process, and give me a steady income, which to be honest is very, very important. But at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking of how to do it, how to continue while there is a pandemic out there that affects everybody in the world, that highlights all sorts of inequalities and injustices, and unfortunately is not experienced in the same degree by everybody. And I really notice also is not experienced the same by the community I aim to understand, which is forced migrants in South Africa. So what I first try to do is try to stay as informed as possible. And just to add a little bit of context, I want to mention some of the issues forced migrants are experiencing in South Africa. Now I will just mention it very briefly, but at the end of this presentation, I have some links of the news I have been reading in case some of you are interested. And there have been severe cases of hunger and eviction and low income, especially a lot of forced migrants due to the lack of documentation are part of the informal sector. So all this has really decreased their quality of life. And together with this, there have been cases, there have been a call for mass deportation, together with an online anti-immigrant lobby that is kind of Trump-like, the hashtag Put South Africa First. There were also protests against truck drivers from a migrant background, which has really fueled xenophobic attacks. And together with this, foreign nationals are often excluded from the measurement from the South African government. For instance, they don't really have access to food parcels. And all these conditions together have also exacerbated mental health concerns like stress, anxiety, depression, that perhaps they were also there before, but now they are also combined with this sense of not belonging, of being excluded from the government measurements to go through the pandemic. But together with this, kind of sad news, I have also encountered several initiatives of solidarity and altruism. For instance, I have read several Ethiopian and Somalian spaza shop owners have donated food parcels not only to foreign migrants, but everybody in their neighborhoods. I also read that the Mandela Rose Foundation mobilized over 450 alumni from different African countries to support households of foreign nationals, and all this based on the philosophy of Ubuntu. I also read that the C19 People's Coalition made an online statement that condemns xenophobic calls for mass deportation. So I'm trying to follow all sort of news of what is happening now in South Africa day by day. But I really feel that's not enough. And this sense of like being informal is not enough have really kind of fueled a sort of identity crisis, because if my whole PhD project is about how academia can be meaningful in the life of refugees, sometimes I feel just to understand, just to read is not enough. What is my role in all of this? How can I be engaged myself with forced migrant communities I encounter? So from a very intuitive way, I started a WhatsApp group with the women I mentioned earlier from DRC. First to apologize because I just left all of a sudden, but also to just remain in touch, to know how they were doing during the pandemic. And through this group, some of the women asked me to support them to have enough food during the lockdown. And I tried to do this a little bit, but unfortunately, I cannot provide for several households. So I also wanted to take advantage of my position here in a university in the global north And the Vrije Universiteit released some funding to know about the experiences of forced migrants during the pandemic. And together with my colleagues, we developed the project Scholarship for Change as an expression of solidarity, and is grounded in two goals. First, we want to collaborate closely with different forced migrant communities in each context and address the specific challenge the community rise themselves. And second, the project wants to also document the stories of these communities about their challenges, but also their strategies and their resilience, to also try to unsettle the simplistic image of refugees or migrants as either a threat or victims. So based on these, 3 side projects were created: Art for Change in the Netherlands. You can find more information in the website. And it's a project that works with LGBTQ plus artists with a forced migrant background. Education for Change, that is based in San Diego, California. And Food for Change, this is the one I developed, that is based in Port Elizabeth with a group of women from the DRC. And I want to tell you a little bit more about Food for Change. It started with this idea that the women needed enough food during the lockdown for their families. And we wanted to keep it quite simple and be focusing on food. So we said we can do 3 rounds or exchanging cooking recipes of their choice through WhatsApp, so they could use audio, text, photo, video. And first, the idea was to know a little bit more about the daily experiences of during the pandemic. So really seeing cooking and sharing food as part of daily life, as something that you must do every day, but also one of the activities that can be seen as an act of self-care or leisure that you can continue during the lockdown. And also we wanted to regard food as an expression of cultural heritage and adaptation in migrants. I'm also seeing the kitchen as a laboratory of knowledge. So seeing cooking as really a dialogue between theory and practice. We presented this idea, the funding was approved. Me and the women were quite excited to continue, but then challenges started to emerge. First, there were some internal conflicts among the women, because when I made this group and I created the WhatsApp group, I didn't realize one of them was not completely Congolese, but half Ugandan. And apparently this became a main issue among them. And there were some tension, and I was afraid we couldn't continue. And I really didn't know how to address it when I couldn't be there. Everything had to be online. But the women talked among themselves and they arrived on agreement. To be honest, I don't really know exactly what happened. I think that's private. They want to keep it private. But they found a way to work with each other, so we could continue through that. And then there was the issue of how to send the money to cook the recipes, especially because several forced migrants cannot access bank accounts because they don't have the documents. And we find a way through one of the relatives of the women. And after a few weeks, we were able to send the money, and among themselves, they organized themselves and they split the money in equal amounts. So that was the second obstacle we went through. And just as we started, there were as well some personal issues. The youngest of the participants, it was a lady that had just arrived to South Africa, so she was not really fluent in English, and she needed some help from her husband, but he was not very happy about it. So she just left the group, and I tried to talk to her. The leader of the Congolese ladies tried to talk to her, but unfortunately there was no way to convince him. And yeah, we decided that for now we had to let it go, especially because, as I mentioned, everything is online. So this really started to show the limitations. But after a month of trying to go through these obstacles, we finally decided to start. And I wanted to break the ice by presenting a recipe of my own. I shared a recipe called pastel de lote. This is a Mexican recipe, a recipe from my grandmother, and I shared it on Mother's Day, trying to really start the project, and I was a bit afraid how will they react and if they like it. I was very, very nervous, to be honest. But a few days later, the women start sharing the recipes, and what I also really appreciate is they did it in their own way. Women start sharing, for instance, also their groceries, so they will present me all their ingredients they bought. And they will also play with the language. They will jump from words in Lingala to French to English to Swahili, and they will be very spontaneous about it. Some of the recipes they presented was, for instance, these spice lime sticks with potato and salad. It was from Mama Anita. Another mama presented fried chicken with mitake, and these are fried doughs of flour, eggs, cheese, and butter. This is from Mama Linda. Another mama presented fumbwa. This is a spinach stew, quite typical dish from Congo. Fried chicken, and I got a lot of recipes of pop. Really, really a lot of pop. And after sharing all these recipes, we did 2 rounds, and the third one we decided that we wanted to show what we have learned so far. So each of us cooked a recipe from another participant. I cooked pondu and chapati, which I must say it was a total mess. It took me 3 hours, and even just get the ingredients, it was a whole adventure. But I must say I really enjoyed myself by doing it. And after these 3 rounds, we tried to have like a sort of group discussion where I asked them to let me know what they thought about the project, what did they like, what can be improved. And it was difficult to have a group conversation through WhatsApp, to be honest. So then I also decided to have individual conversation, and there I got a bit more in-depth answers. And I noticed the participants enjoyed the project in general. They were quite positive, but they found it was not enough, that it was not ambitious enough. They really emphasized that they are business women. They said things like, yeah, we have saloons, we know how to sew, we do many, many things. And they really mentioned that they want to do projects that really have to do with their entrepreneurship ambitions. And these comments, I found it very, very inspirational, but at the same time, it really fueled a fear that I had since I met them. And that's the fear that I cannot fulfill their expectations, especially because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when I can come back to South Africa, when I can be there in Port Elizabeth. And after talking with them, with all of them, and also talking to my supervisors, I also came to admit how limited I am from my position at the moment, and admit that perhaps my role, at least for now, perhaps is smaller and simpler, but at least I wanted to be honest and as transparent as possible. So I have been struggling with let it go and really try to translate the expectation of the academic world to also the expectation of these women to become more entrepreneurship. And for now, we agree that what I can offer and we can work together at the moment is to create a cooking recipe book that is honest and intuitive, and it really showed the recipes in their own words. So we want to, for instance, maintain this playfulness of the language, and also we don't want to present this sort of traditional recipe book that is step 1, step 2, step 3, but really allow the spontaneity and the humor and the fluidity these women have to describe their recipes in their own way. We are taking inspiration from other projects such as La Cocina in San Francisco and Palestine in Palestine, and these are books that use recipes to unsettle the negative images of migrants. So with this book, we really hope we can portray these women in their own terms, without narrowing them as victims or threats, but also we don't want to stretch or force their experience in the project to show this over-romanticized resilience just for academic purposes. We just started to create this book, so we don't know what will happen. I will keep you updated. For now, I'm just trying to curate all the information with their guidance. And I want to share one text I got from one of the participants. I asked her how she would like to be presented in this recipe book. And Mama Petroni said, my life wasn't good. All my younger age, I was always having tears in my life. But I knew somehow I will make it. And I did my best to be who I am. I am proud of myself because nothing can stop me to move forward. That's why until my age, I'm still studying. She's studying to be a nurse, to build and secure my future, even if it's not easy. But I hope everything will be fine. Yes, I can. And with this comment, I want to show that what I have appreciated the most of this project is this opportunity to reconnect with these ladies, to remain engaged despite the distance. I really enjoy reading their recipes. I get very hungry when I transcribe their information and getting to know their families and building a certain degree of trust so they can share with me comments just like this. So I don't know what the outcome will be, either this recipe book or if there might be some academic articles out of this. But for now, my hopes are in that I can really go back to Port Elizabeth. I can really meet again with these ladies. And for now, I just want to thank you for your attention. And please, if you have any question or suggestion, critique, or any idea to improve this project and also to support the entrepreneurial ambition of these women, yes, please let me know. Thank you, and I leave here yes, some of the sources I use and some interesting articles about the experiences of first migrants during the pandemic.
Mimi, thank you. That was incredibly interesting and inspiring. What I would like to do very much is ask participants to comment, questions, anything you'd like to kind of chat to Mimi about. I think the best, or maybe for me the easiest, is just to pop your video on and then that way I'll be able to see, okay, you are there and wanting to chat. I think that would be the easiest.
Yeah. I will stop sharing my screen. I think that's also better.
There we go. No, keep your screen on, Mimi. Oh, okay, never mind. It's okay. We'll just hope we're not going to get Zoom bombed, but it's all right. I'm sure we won't. Glenn, lovely to see you. Very lovely to see you.
Colleagues. Thanks, Andrea, and thank you, Mimi, for this wonderful presentation. My mouth was watering as I was reading some of that.
Glenn, you're kind of freezing a bit. I wonder if it would be better for me to turn over.
But the one thing that I wanted to ask you was, how did you, is it a bit better if I take off my video?
Oh, I didn't hear the question to be
Glenn?
I'm sorry, I've got a bad connection. I think I'm going to...
There you go. Okay,
I'm just going to leave my video off. Thanks.
Yeah.
My question was, how did the ladies accept you with you being younger than them? I noticed you refer to them as mama. Is that a sign of respect because they are older than you?
Yes, they're all older than me. They're all of them are mothers, and like you say, it's a way of respect. Yeah, I was also very nervous about it, and I was really honest. I told them, like, look, I want to keep in touch. I have this idea. I know I'm younger. I'm a foreigner. But what do you think? I also try to just be very transparent with them about everything since the beginning. And something that is very, very important is that they have their own organization among themselves. They have a leader. So everything I discussed first with the leader. So I think the first step was to strengthen my relationship with that leader. So if there was any instructions such as, oh, you have to present 2 recipes this week, it will be her and not me who announced it to these women. So for me, it was very important to respect their internal organization and the leadership of the elder in the group. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay, Glenn, we can't. Okay, so you're happy with that. So yeah, it's fascinating to me, all of the kind of interpersonal dynamics that you have to deal with when you're doing engaged scholarship. Apart from, you know, age differences, the fact that you're a foreigner, was that kind of important?
I think it was but it's not. It was important, but I cannot say it was like just positive or just negative. I think in a way they were interested that I was not South African. So they were also, I found they were very curious about it. They will ask about. They link Mexico a lot in their imagination. They asked me about it, especially because it's next to the U.S. So I think that was also an interesting path for them. But on the other hand, they will also be honest. And like one of the women said, the first day I met them, they were like, "Yeah, you are foreigner, we are foreigner, but you are treated different here because you are white." And it was also very important to notice these dynamics and the power relation. And for instance, together with Glenn's question, they were older than me, so there was this respect I need to have to them. But then they were like, yeah, you might be younger, but then you have other position because you're a foreigner, but you come in a very different path than us. So it was all the time this sort of negotiation. But I also tried to use my background to connect with them in any way possible. That's why, for instance, I share first a recipe that is very close to my family, to my culture, to also show something that perhaps is not that well known in their background, so in Uganda and Congo, but in a way that connects us very much, and that was corn, the use of corn. Like that's why I mentioned they cook a lot of pop, and corn is very important, a very important crop in their own culture, but also in mine. And in Mexico, corn is extremely special. So I also tried to find a way to connect our cultures in a way that could smooth our connection.
Yeah, thanks. So again, I'm inviting comments or questions. You'll just have to put your video on to indicate that you'd like to chat. It's quite difficult to kind of talk into the into the you know, ether there. So I'm not if you would like to, if you're searching for your video or whatever, and that's a problem. If you want to pose questions on the chat, then just pose them to everybody, and then I can look at that too. Let's open the chat up. So I'll just put here. You can respond to me. Pose questions.
Yes, or suggestions or critiques. Please.
Or suggestions, yes, or just comments.
I have another question, if I may, Andrea.
You may, with pleasure, Glenn.
Thank you. I noticed you've touched on the subject about pop, and I noticed that pop in South Africa is also sort of ethnic or cultural or location specific. It's eaten by a lot of South Africans, but more so, I think it's got the ability for it to be sold and marketed by foreigners to foreigners is what I've noticed. Because I go out searching for pap in Port Elizabeth, and I have to go and find people who have already cooked it because I find it so difficult. So when a pap is being spoken about by the women, is it because it's only a common staple, or also because it's one of the most affordable things and it's able to spread, and because it's so filling? And does that influence the type of recipe which they make? That's part one. And then part two is how long do you think it will be before that type of recipe book that you're working on will be released so that we can start cooking those wonderful dishes? Because I would love to cook those dishes which the immigrants make, which are not unique to South Africans. Thank you, Mimi.
Yes, thank you, Glenn, for your questions. The first one, I think that's interesting. I haven't really asked them that directly, if they choose pop because they like it or because it's affordable. I will say it's a mix of both. I have read also in the news that pop is so consumed because it's a very affordable, it makes you really full, and in Mexico it's also so popular because everybody can afford it. But at the same time, I noticed the women, they enjoy it. I enjoy myself. I really like. I think they choose it because out of pleasure as well. In many of the recipes they use, they will have not just pop but also rice or cassava. So they have a wide variety, but they choose pop. And they mentioned that in Congo they have yellow pop, that it's different from the one that is mostly sold or consumed in South Africa. And they say it's quite hard to get yellow pop, but it worth to try to find it. So I think it's a very special meal for them. This even if it's cheap or not, it's something they like. And about the book, I don't know. Like it's going very slow because for me it's very important that the women are very close in the process of creating the book. But it's not their priority, to be honest. They have other things going on. They have to study and work and take care of their children. So they reply when they can, and I don't want to pressure them for this. But I hope we can have a draft by the end of this year, and then we'll see. And I think if the book can be sold and everything, I will leave that in the hands of these women, so they will see how things go. But I will keep you updated, of course, whenever this book is released, and we hope to share, perhaps not the entire book, but at least some recipes in the website of my project. And yeah, I will share with you all of that as soon as it's online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary, I see you popping up and down on my screen. Are you there? Are you wanting to chat?
Sorry, me.
No, it's Gary.
Oh no, I'm just very inspired and interested. Thank you. Okay, I don't have a question at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Gary's there. Hi.
How's it, Andrea? Hello, everyone.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Are you eating pap?
I love pap, and so and it is very much a cultural thing in Africa. But I find in the Eastern Cape you don't find it as much as you do in the sort of northern areas of South Africa. And I was just wondering how the immigrants found the ingredients for their dishes. You know, if they're cooking their traditional dishes here. I mean, I think Glenn is right. You don't see it in restaurants very often here. I mean, you see it in the shops, and I know how to cook it. Because I like a version of it which we call krummel pap, which is a special way of cooking it. But I was interested in terms of how people found as immigrants their traditional ingredients. And maybe you mentioned it in the thing, but my apologies for being late.
No problem. Thank you for your question. And it's a very good question as well. Well, they will mention that they will go to other foreign shops. So I think that's also very interesting. A lot of the women mentioned they know Ethiopian shops in their own neighborhood that sell different ingredients. Or they will go to other Congolese or Ugandan persons to get these ingredients. Or they will find similar options in South African supermarkets. So for instance, one of the ingredients I found quite interesting, it was the cassava leaves for fondue. And and I had the same issue here in the Netherlands. You can only find it frozen, so they sell it in these little bags, and you have to defrost it in the pan and then cook it. So the process is longer. But they said it was quite a struggle to find it. But I think they all know their spots around the city where they can find different things, and also where you can find it cheaper. So that was very interesting, I think, to also get to know better your own city, where you can find the things you need. And that's why I also mentioned that food is also a very good example to see how migrants adapt. And I must also say, some of these women, they don't only cook like traditional Congolese or Ugandan recipes, but one woman also cooked a meal from Ghana, another one from Cameroon, and other one did like just spaghetti with beef. So they also mentioned that here in South Africa, they met people from other backgrounds, from different parts of South Africa, but also from other African countries, and then they learn new recipes in that way, which I also found very, very interesting. Yes, and I see there's also other question here from Ethan. But I don't know if
Ethan.
I replied correctly your question, Gary. Or do you want to ask me something else?
No. I'm sorry, I actually didn't quite get that, so I missed a little bit of your. But yeah, it's Ethan asking about what food in Port Elizabeth you found curious or interesting or tasty or weird.
Yeah, just that.
Yes, like with me or the women?
With you.
With me. That's an interesting question. Yeah, I tried to find pop as well, because I tried a few times, but it was hard. So I only ate pop when I ate with these women, actually. And I tried to cook it myself, but I also was in a small place. I didn't really have like a proper kitchen. And in terms of the food I found here and there, I just tried to go to different restaurants in Port Elizabeth. I love that you have I forgot the English name. Calamari, I think that's how you say it. I'm just a big fan of seafood, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah, you're a coastal city, so I try to eat as much seafood as possible. But I must say the best meal I had was with these ladies. I think it was also because the whole environment, that it was just this day with only women and children. And even if you have very good restaurants in PE, I think, yeah, when you eat food that is made at home by a mama, it's something else. But I also try to do some of my own dishes. I did quite a few times guacamole. That I think you have it there, but you don't really know how to do it. So I did it how we do it in Mexico. I also tried to do some adaptation, like vegan tacos for Marisa, that is also here. And in that way, it was also funny to try to find ingredients from Mexico in South Africa. And I did guacamole for these ladies, and they liked it. So I was very, very happy that they enjoyed it.
I hear we have a restaurant in PE that's a Mexican restaurant that is actually named as a swear word, which seems one of those strange kind of cultural misrecognitions in a way. So there's a question that I just want to sneak in here, taking advantage. And you've spoken, this is a little bit more serious, but you've spoken very often of a forced migrant, and you seem to be talking particularly to forced migrants. What exactly is that? What do you mean by that?
This is a topic we have been debating in my project, not just in South Africa, but also in the Netherlands, in the US. And for now, in my case, I can say, when I mentioned forced migrant, is somebody who, there was an issue of force in their migration that pushed this person to leave their place of origin and does not allow him or her to return at the moment. So this doesn't have to be just, for instance, war, but it can also be a natural disaster, issue because of their sexuality, of gender, an issue of extreme violence, also really economic hardship. So any force that really shape their migration in a way that perhaps for other migrants, for instance, expats don't have. But I must say the limits of what kind of migrant it is a refugee, an asylum seeker, an expat, an economic migrant. I think those borders are thinner and thinner, and it depends on each circumstance. So what I try to do also now within this project Food for Change is trying to talk with the women about how they see themselves, if they see themselves as somebody who at the moment cannot return to Congo or Uganda, and if they recognize themselves as refugee or forced migrants. And for now it's the case, but yeah, I think that's an important debate to have. And yeah, it's quite complex, I must say, to have like clear definitions of what kind of migrant is each person. And also in the project, we want to, like I say, emphasize the voice of this person over, for instance, the legal framework, which is also quite a debate of who can get the documents for refugee or asylum seeker in South Africa. Because many of these women express that they cannot access these documents. So technically they cannot be seen as refugees. But in their experience, they will say they are refugees. So yeah, it's a debate that we are having in the project. And we don't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, tough thing. Sorry, I'm muting myself because just as luck would have it, there's a tree felling going on outside my home, and I'm imagining it's causing very loud noises. It's certainly irritating me. Yeah, but yeah, it's tricky, serious kind of concerns, difficult to, I imagine, to then this is sort of moving on again to this idea of what an academic can do, in because I mean, one of the things I found kind of interesting about your initial presentation was, well, you're an academic, you're trying to do an academic project, but you're working with people who also, before they can care about what academics do, is that they need ground under their feet, financial ground, and it seems like a very tricky kind of situation to be working in. I mean, obviously an academic is in a way a reflective stance looking at a community, but if you're looking at a community compared with helping a community, where do you draw that line? And I think that that is a very interesting aspect of your project. Do you want to comment on that? I'm going to mute myself again.
Yes. Yeah, that's very complex. I'm still struggling with that. If you have any tips, let me know, because on the one hand, yeah, I was like, I really mentioned, I tried to be just honest and tell them, you look like I'm not a charity. I don't have the means to give money when you need it, or to give money to start a business, for instance. I don't, at the university cannot do that. But at the same time, I find very hypocrite to say like, well, I need your knowledge, I need your interview for me to get my degree and to publish, and I don't care if you have eaten today or not. I think there's also something to do with ethics, but it's very difficult to find a way, to find a balance, or to say of like, okay, I care about you, I know, I want to know how are you, just not because you're a participant, because yeah, you're a person, you're a human being with a whole history behind. But at the same time, I cannot just become yeah, I cannot sustain you. So it's complicated. I try to be honest about it and tell them like, look, this I am a student, I'm doing this project, and I really want to know about your life. I think it's very interesting, and I want to know it because we want to, for instance, change this image of migrants as just victims. I want to show that you are more than that. Would you be interested in help me to do this project? And I can help you in exchange by getting the food. But for instance, with this book, we are saying like, well, I can create the book with your help. We can make it quite nice, and if you want to sell it later, perhaps I can help you in your entrepreneurial ambitions. So I think in a way it's about dialogue and try to find expectations of each other. So being clear and honest of like, yeah, well, what do you expect of this project? What I expect of this project. But I think there is always, it's quite painful to do this, to be honest. And it's not very clear, and I don't know if anybody has an answer. I try to talk with scholars who are way more experienced than I, and nobody can give me like a clear answer, like, okay, you do this and this, and then this pain will go away, and it will be like a completely fair dialogue and connection with these ladies. I think the whole nature of academia, sometimes it feels a bit unfair from my perspective, to be honest.
Gary, sorry to interrupt. I thought Gary had a comment, and I was just wondering if you want to come on and chat. Okay.
Yeah, just to say, I mean, I think it's a brilliant question, but Miriam, you know, I think it's an expression of where academia has moved from the outside observer that was observing subjects in a zoo kind of thing to now being a participant in the process. So I don't think that there is an answer for you. I think it's always a negotiation, and will be dependent on the environment, the people that you're exchanging knowledge with. You know, so it's going to be a negotiation, I would assume, every time. But that you're open to that, and that it is conflicting for you, I think it marks a huge shift from, say, 50 years ago, when people would just simply people were simply subjects to be studied and to advance your career through that exchange. You know, I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's a really tough call.
Yeah, it is. I like you said, I think it's a constant dialogue. It's not really an answer, but yeah, I think it's a dialogue worth having, and just question it. And I try to don't, because I was say like, yeah, you can use this to be reflective, to write about it. But sometimes I feel that's not enough. At the same time, I want to just appreciate this small gesture, like I mentioned at the end of the presentation, that at least I noticed little by little they tell me more about their lives, and they ask me more as well. So I think this small connection, and I don't want to sound corny or romanticize it, but just this trust that we have in each other, that we feel more comfortable with each other, I think that also is very, very valuable. And like you say, I hope this connection can also help to transform academia with the time, where researchers and participants can have more trust of each other and be more transparent with each other as well.
Yeah, I think if I can respond, Andrew, just to say, Miriam, what value do you think you bring to the relationship as the academic? What, you know, so the value that they bring to the relationship is their indigenous knowledge, the knowledge of the foodstuffs, and that you're getting insight to that, but you bring something to that relationship. I mean, and what is that as an academic? You know, it's not, they're not going to read your paper more than likely. Maybe the cookbook or recipe book is one of those, but yeah, I think it's for us to identify what value we bring to that relationship, that it's not just a one-way street of exchange.
Yes. Honestly, what I try to do is also first try to highlight that their information, it might be more important than what they think. to also emphasize how insightful and interesting and beautiful are their own recipes. So also taking the time to listen to show that. But I, in a more practical way, also try to notice, be a sort of bridge to connect them in the academic world in a way, to show that there is possibilities to have these projects, because these women have never been reached by other engaged scholars before. So what I also try to say is, like, perhaps if they enjoy this project, there will be other opportunities in the future, and they can be part of this network. When the university want to do projects, they can reach them. The women have shown quite some interest about it, and what I'm also trying to do is to connect them with other entrepreneurial organizations in South Africa. So if they have more, for instance, I contact an organization that work with women of color and trying to really support entrepreneurial ideas. I have also contacted other organizations that work with refugees who have a businessman like. So I think all this information is quite interesting for them in case they want to connect with others, not just in South Africa, that can help them in what they want, that this be more business-like. And in another way, I think they were also interested to get to know other recipes. They will ask me like, oh, can you tell me other recipe from your country? And I think that's, yeah, the knowledge I can also bring. So far, it has been quite interesting for them to just know about it. And I really hope the recipe book can also be a good opportunity for them. Like the leader of the group mentioned that if they have this book, she can show it to younger women who just get married and they want to learn how to cook. So for them, this knowledge to preserve these recipes is interesting for their own community, which, yeah, for them, it's a practical way to also take advantage of this project. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really expecting an answer per se. I think it's for every person in every situation to work out. But I think the preservation of indigenous knowledge is probably one of the key things that you can do. You know, is that just by recording the recipe, that you are doing that, because often that gets lost in the massive information that we deal with on a regular basis. You know, so no, yeah, great stuff.
Thanks, Mimi. We've got about 2 minutes left before we kind of. So if there are burning questions, it's time now to kind of show your face. If not, then there's one thing I want to kind of, maybe it's an image that I want to leave us with, and it's a very, to my mind, quite a paradoxical image. So if you take that image that you showed earlier of that poster that is calling for mass deportation, and then on the other hand, if you take the image of your cookbook, let's have a look at that. There we go. So if you were to put the image of your cookbook next to that, in a way, maybe that's how you would have to try to articulate the value of what it is that you're doing. It might seem a drop in the ocean against this massive call for deportation. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's just something I'd like to leave you with, and maybe ask you to comment on that.
Yeah, that's a good image. I don't know if people, I would like other people to comment more on that.
It's just food for thought. It would be, can your cookbook stem that kind of flow? Is that what it's intending to do? Maybe it's more than just a cookbook. Maybe there's a whole lot of things that have to happen in order to kind of counteract that call. It's a xenophobic poster, isn't it? And perhaps that image is what you need to counteract. I see Gary's up again.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, it's ironic that they're using the guy in the green blanket as their symbol. You know, that comes from Marikana. He was the guy that was killed in Marikana. And the majority of those workers there are not local residents in terms of the mine. The majority come from either immigrants or from homeland, not homelands, traditional areas. You know, so I mean, I think it's very ironic. And the other thing is that that poster is wrong in terms of the influx. The influx has slowed; it hasn't increased in the recent past. You know, and I think that that's part of the work that academics can do, is just say no, that the facts are not that. You know, and the images that you're not using. But I think, Andrew, your idea of contrasting it with the value that immigrants bring to our society through something very practical like food, I think is a fantastic thing. You know, I was thinking, Miriam, when you were talking about us being a coastal city, is that we don't I mean, there are 2 restaurants at the harbor, but we don't really have a lot of seafood influence in our local cuisine, you know, and I was suddenly like, wow, you know. I mean,
we have a cuisine? Oh, sorry.
No,
Well, I think more than other cities, perhaps, yeah.
No, but you have to go to Jeffreys Bay to get like really good seafood. You know, I mean, you've got the 2 at the harbor, but that's more fast food than the yeah. But yeah, so thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we've kind of run out of time, so I just want to thank you very much for an really fascinating presentation, which has offered us, I'm going to be kind of corny now and say, well, lots of food for thought, which it has. And it was wonderful to see you again, and I wish you absolutely the best in this project. I think that it's very exciting and very inspiring, and I hope that everybody has enjoyed the presentation. And what I'd like you to do just before you sign off is maybe just you know, put your video on, say hi and bye to Mimi, and yes, this kind of breaks that very abrupt ending of the seminar, which I always hate, but it's very nice to see everybody's faces. Lovely to see you all, and yes, hope we will see you next week for our next presentation, which will continue this kind of theme of what it is that real people are doing, living along with lockdown. Well, not really lockdown anymore, but COVID-19 and the aftermath and the effects of it. So thank you. Very nice to see you. Lovely to see you, Adi. Adi's from Nigeria, so we're going to have to also think about Nigerian cooking. But all right, so I have to end the session very abruptly, but thank you so much for joining us, and cheerio. See you.